for joining us today. My name is Nick. I'm from Nectar Creative Communications. In fact, we're all from Nectar Creative Communications today. As an event management company, we've had a bit of time on our hands since being shut down sometime in March. We've spent that time contemplating the way forward. And so one way forward we thought was to share our learnings with those out there, and if that can benefit you and your events, then happy days. It'll move the whole industry forward. So today, what we're going to do is take out the crystal ball, dust it off, and do a bit of future predictions as to where this industry is going to go in the short and medium and long term. And with me today, I have our Managing Director, Peter Moore, and our Senior Event Producer, Tiffany Bow. And between them, not myself, between them, they have about 40 years experience in the industry. So if anyone is qualified to have a crack at predicting where things go, then I think it's these two. Now, I should say, I know it's something people hesitate to do, to plant a flag and say this is what I think the future will hold. But keep in mind, and I say this to Tiffany and Peter, that no one's ever held accountable for these sort of predictions. No one's ever sacking economists. So speak freely and let's see where we go. So first question I have for Peter, I guess, is, and then you, Tiffany, is around the idea of recovery. Obviously, at the moment here in Australia, we are still shut down, as are a lot of countries. So the question is, when do you think things are going to start easing up, and then how do you think that's going to look?
So I think it's obviously very difficult without government direction, which we don't have at the moment in terms of, everyone's calling for the plan for the way out. But if you look at what, I guess, more on an international level, and we've had a lot of time to do quite a bit of reading around this, it seems that the general consensus is that by the end of this year, smaller events will be able to take place, and probably more private events, all our weddings and those sorts of things around Christmas, the corporate parties, gatherings, that sort of stuff. And again, this is probably much more of an international take on it because that's a bigger market overseas, with then the larger, more public style events really kicking in from 2021. And that's from my reading, Tiffany, and I don't know if you've read anything differently there, that I think it will be very much a slowly kind of growth approach. We won't just switch the tap back on again in the way it was switched off.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me as well, it's been a lot from reading and also talking to our suppliers, I think, is, getting the pulse there. So agree, it'll be a phased approach, and it'll be those events, I think, where there's a bit more control around it, particularly conference like business events where there is a bit more control, with health and safety and numbers and all those sorts of things. And I definitely think it's going to be those big consumer events and festivals and things like that, which will probably be the last to come back on board, and they'll probably be transformed forever, I think, as well.
All good. So if we then just, I guess, stretch it out again, we're shut down at the moment. We've seen a lot of events pushed out to later 2020. Obviously, yet to see if that will, pan out for them. But events, let's say we've got an event happening later this year. How do you see that working? How's that going to, come about logistically, and how are we going to make, companies to make that happen? Tiffany, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, we have got a couple of events which are still scheduling to take place later this year, and the approach has been that we've got to start looking at the health and safety side of things. We've also got to start thinking about those delegates who would have come but won't feel comfortable coming to a large gathering. So what can we offer them? So that's where we started looking at those hybrid models of an event. So we will still have a live event, but then we'll also have an online offering for those people. And then, of course, that impacts on your marketing, which also then impacts on your sponsorship and your revenue and all those sides of things as well. So it's almost like you've got to completely redevelop your event strategy, looking at two distinct audiences and how you're going to cater for those, essentially. And for any event that's already booked in for later in this year, you've got on top of that, having to negotiate or renegotiate with venues and other suppliers as well, to cater for numbers that could potentially drop.
Yeah, I read something really interesting the other day, and I thought it was a nice little phrase that I think the next lot of events, when we do come to meet face to face, will be sort of low touch interaction but high touch communication. So I can really resonate with that. I think we're looking at, and we're currently looking at, registration process, I don't think will ever be the same. We won't be handing things out and doing that. There will still be that need to respect what people have been through, and respect that everyone will still be wanting to be mindful of the social distancing, I believe. So, the way we set up our rooms, we'll be looking at, a room that used to have 200 capacity. We'll need to revisit that and see how we don't want to cram everybody in theatre style anymore, and have the seats all linked together so that we're literally sitting on each other's laps, like things like that. And I think that will be a change moving forward. I think we'll actually like that extra space in the room. And, if I am looking at that crystal ball, I think that's something delegates will get quite used to. What that means, in terms of revenue models for venues and how we actually, deal with room hire and capacities and all of that sort of stuff is a massive implication down the track. But yeah, I think, and then in terms of that high touch communication, we used to do the upfront housekeeping notes of, fire evacuations and things like that. There will need to be a really, really fine line sort of walked through the event of communicating all of these additional health and safety things that we've done without it becoming overpowering the actual point of the event. And also, you don't want to make it unnerving for people, but they need to feel really, really confident that we've thought of absolutely everything and that they are safe there.
I agree. And I was actually talking to somebody from a venue today, and I think it'll centre around three things. So it'll be the health and safety, it'll be the AV and tech, and then it'll be the communication side of things, and to the audience and to the suppliers and all that, those different parties involved. So that's what it's all going to centre around, but be so very different from what we're used to. But within that as well, which I think is probably the most exciting, there's so many opportunities within that as well, for everybody concerned, for the venues, for AV and production, for us as event planners, to start looking at doing things differently, and focusing more on the needs of the audience and what they're after, and the content as well.
And Tiffany, and just thinking of one of the events that I know you're working on later in the year, like the idea of being able to, it's in a great location that will, if we need to, we can go outside and do breakouts outside, and actually, and that's one of the benefits, I think, of conferencing in Queensland, but I think they're things that we're going to, after this kind of oppressed lockdown stage that we've been in, I also get the sense that putting people inside a conference room is not going to be what they're after anymore either. I think, we will need to consider some more open, breathable spaces, because I think everybody will want to have that breathing space around them.
And I completely agree with that as well. And that bodes so well, particularly for our regional areas, because that's what they offer. They offer open spaces and unique spaces as well, rather than just, 4 walls and a concrete box. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think, as I mentioned, the exciting thing about this is that people will completely rethink the way conferences and events are held, and hopefully, like so many other things we're hoping at the moment, that will be for the better.
Awesome. Well, you've just effectively answered my next 2 questions, which is great. It was all about where events are going to go. I guess I was going to say, obviously, we're talking late this year, but then next year, at some point in the future, obviously there will be a vaccine, there will be a solution, there's something that will come from. We can only hope. Basically, I guess the question was, how's that going to play out when we've gone down this path of learning new ways of doing things? Are we going to just switch back to the old, which is what was familiar, or, as you say, the benefits therein are going to suggest that, well, no, let's hang on to this and let's take advantage of it? Which, I guess, pulling it back to now in the next few months, we don't know, and that's the big question. When are things going to be safe? We were, as we all know, one of the first ones to shut down, and obviously the first to shut down and the last to be released. So this whole idea of online hybrid events is going to be around for a while, and it has been quite fascinating to watch the acceleration, the growth of the online solutions coming about and the new players into the market. So my question now is what do you see in the next sort of 6 to 8 months? What are the big challenges for someone, obviously getting people together in a live space? That's something else. That's a health concern, and that's something to be guided by government. But what do you think at the moment the biggest challenges in putting things online, the virtual event? What's the biggest challenge? And also, what are the big opportunities that you think that people are finding immediately? Peta?
Well, I think the thing that is potentially overwhelming a lot of people is the technology, which I would like to say, and I guess my analogy for that is that's the vehicle for delivery. So that's your hotel, that's your menus and venues part of the event. And I would recommend that instead of kind of leaping to the how, if people are kind of like, I've got this event, it's the why, which is really important. The why, what are your objectives? Setting those objectives first, and then who are you speaking to? And that will feed into what's the best technology. Because as you said, there's next week there'll be another amazing new platform. There's ways you can kind of utilize multiple platforms within one event. The opportunity now where you don't have to bring everybody together means you don't have to get everything done in 2 days. You can create something that can be a week long, tap in, tap out. There's so many opportunities now to actually really, really engage your audience on their terms. Whereas live events, from conferencing, really we're engaging them, but they're still very much on our terms because we're creating the parameters within that they have to interact within. Whereas I think virtual just blows that open, and it's really, really exciting with what you can do.
Yeah, I agree. I think right now though, most people are looking at virtual or online events and just going, where on earth do I start? Because what's happening at the moment, and even though as you said, Nick, it's been really fascinating watching this proliferation, popping up like mushrooms, all these different online event platforms, and then it's like, where do you start? Because they all offer different things, they're all at different price points. And I think for a lot of event planners, whether they're in-house PCOs or who they are, that's a different skill set often for them. So and that's something that they don't have. So suddenly they're looking at production and AV and all that sort of thing, and script writing, which is something that they probably never really had to think about before. So I think that's one part of it. And I think also the biggest challenge with online events is getting over that fear of cannibalization, that if you offer an online component to your live event, mainly you'll be doing it first and foremost because you have to, because that there are people who won't be able to come, but people who'll be worried, that there's that fear that people just won't come, they'll just take the online option. But the more, and I know Peter will agree with me, the more we read about this and the more we've read case studies of events where they've actually done that, that's not the case. You actually are attracting a different audience, a wider audience. So the exciting thing here is that, your conference that you have every year that attracts 300 people from Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, the normal places, you now potentially attract an audience, throughout so New Zealand and Southeast Asia, people who want to go but can't for travel reasons, but also You know, and I'm thinking about our recent event we had in the mental health sector. There are people who just can't go to these conferences. You know, they physically can't go to them. So to me, it's inclusivity as well, which is once again opening up another audience that we didn't have before. So, as I say, rather than fearing, you know, the change to the normal model, it's starting to think about, well, there's a whole lot more out there, and it just widens our scope.
Yep.
And I think, you know, sorry to jump in, but I think also the exciting thing, we do an event every year, which is in the clean tech space. And one of the things, the contradictions, I guess, is bringing everyone together and the carbon footprint that an event, and we all know that, you know, it's really quite a heavy carbon footprint, but it's always been difficult to convince people that there is value by joining online as well. And there's also value in holding an event online. So I think that by the time we get to our next event, that, you know, I'm really hoping that will have settled a little bit, and therefore, you know, we can offer those that are really truly, you know, worried and concerned and measuring the impact of attending events just as much value without having to, you know, travel and you know, sort of, I guess, do that whole carbon footprint problem.
I completely agree with that, because, you know, at the event we went to last year, the program we did, we had a whole piece around sustainable events, and it's becoming more and more important. But in reality, having a sustainable event policy usually meant, you know, no single-use plastics, no giveaways, and dealing with your food waste, generally speaking. But the elephant in the room was all those people who'd flown to get there, and of course in that model you have no event if people don't do that. So yeah, this to me is truly addressing those sustainability issues around events and giving people that option, you know, to do it differently.
Yep. And at the end of the day, if you know, if you don't do it, somebody else will, and if someone else can cater to a broader audience better, then that'll be the successful event. I've spoken to quite a few professionals in the industry, and they've been, I guess it's been interesting because some of them have just seen it, I think, as a technological solution in the short term. So we take a presentation, we whack it online, it's all good. And then at some point, I see they're going to switch it down and go back to the old ways of doing things, which is not going to happen. I think a lot of people think that, but that's almost a defensive reaction potentially. I don't know. But as you say, the cat's out. I mean, the cat's out of the bag. The opportunities are there. The opportunities to cater to people individually and personalise your communication with each delegate, and to connect with them before the event, during the event, after the event, create communities and everything else. There's too many advantages, I think, to ignore as a way forward. Awesome. All right. Well, look, there's more to talk about that, I think, especially around you know, taking it online. That's probably another subject. So I just want to say thank you both for your time today. And this is our first one, so I think we've done well. And we'll do it again soon.
All right.
Thanks.